Have you ever faced a situation so hopeless even science couldn't offer a solution? That was me, staring death in the face with stage 4 cancer. But what if I told you that faith can move mountains and shrink tumors? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share how I went from planning my funeral to celebrating life. It's a journey that will challenge everything you believe about the power of prayer and the limits of modern medicine. I remember the exact moment my life changed forever. It was a Tuesday morning, just like any other. The sun was peeking through the curtains, and I could hear the birds chirping outside. But as I tried to get out of bed, a wave of dizziness hit me. I stumbled, catching myself on the nightstand. Emily, my wife, looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Daniel, are you okay?" she asked. I nodded, brushing it off as just another bout of fatigue that had been plaguing me for weeks. I'd been feeling off for a while now, losing weight without trying, always tired, sometimes even short of breath. But I kept telling myself it was just stress from work. I had a big project coming up, and I figured my body was just reacting to the pressure. Emily had been begging me to see a doctor, but I always found an excuse. "I'm fine," I'd say. "It'll pass." How wrong I was. That morning, as I sat at the breakfast table, barely able to stomach my toast, Emily put her foot down. "Daniel," she said, her voice firm but filled with love, "I'm calling Dr. Patel. You're going in today." I wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped me. Deep down, I knew she was right. Something was wrong, and it was time to face it. I never imagined the nightmare that was about to unfold. As I sat in Dr. Patel's office later that day, the world seemed to slow down. The ticking of the clock on the wall echoed in my ears. Dr. Patel's face was grim as he sat down across from me, a folder in his hands. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice gentle but serious, "I'm afraid I have some difficult news." The words that followed hit me like a freight train. Terminal cancer, stage 4. The room started to spin as Dr. Patel continued talking, but I could barely hear him. Only one phrase cut through the fog in my mind. 6 months, maybe less. 6 months. That's all the time I had left. How could this be happening to me? I left that office a changed man, carrying a burden I never thought I'd bear. The bright sunshine outside felt like a cruel joke. How could the world just go on like nothing had happened? Didn't it know that my life had just been shattered into a million pieces? The drive home was a blur. Tears clouded my vision as I screamed at God. "Why me?" I yelled, pounding the steering wheel. "Why now? I have a family. I have dreams." But all I heard was silence. In that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. As I pulled into our driveway, a new fear gripped my heart. How could I tell Emily? How could I face my children? How do you tell the people you love most in the world that you're going to leave them? The weight of it all felt crushing. I sat in the car for what felt like hours, trying to find the right words. But there are no right words for news like this. Finally, I dragged myself to the front door. Emily was waiting, her face a mix of hope and fear. One look at me, and she knew. She didn't say a word, just wrapped her arms around me as I broke down. That day, I learned how quickly life can change. One moment, you're planning for the future, thinking about retirement, your kids' college funds, family vacations. The next, you're facing your own mortality, wondering if you'll even see your children graduate high school. As Emily and I sat on the couch, holding each other and crying, I realized nothing would ever be the same. The life we had known, the future we had planned, it was all slipping away like sand through our fingers. And yet, as I looked into Emily's tear-filled eyes, I saw something that would become my lifeline in the dark days ahead, unwavering love and a faith that I had long forgotten. Have you ever felt the crushing weight of a ticking clock counting down your final moments? That's where I found myself after Dr. Patel's devastating news. As the days passed, I watched my body wither, my strength disappearing like sand through an hourglass. The man I once was, strong, confident, full of life, seemed to fade away with each passing hour. Emily, my rock, tried to be strong for both of us, but late at night when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her muffled sobs coming from the kitchen. Those moments broke my heart more than any physical pain ever could. Our children, bless their souls, tiptoed around me as if I were made of glass. Their eyes held questions I couldn't bear to answer, their whispered conversations falling silent whenever I entered the room. Each morning, I woke up wondering if it would be my last. The fear was paralyzing, seeping into every corner of my mind. I found myself doing things I never thought I'd do, planning my own funeral, choosing songs that would play as my loved ones said goodbye, writing letters to my family for milestones I'd never see. The weight of impending death crushed me, and I felt myself slipping away, not just physically, but spiritually. In those dark hours, I prayed. Oh, how I prayed. But these weren't the gentle, thankful prayers of my youth. No, these were desperate, angry pleas hurled at the heavens. God, I'd cry out, my voice hoarse with emotion. If you're real, why are you letting this happen to me? Haven't I been faithful? Haven't I lived a good life? For weeks, I heard nothing but silence. It felt like God had abandoned me in my darkest hour, leaving me to face death alone. Little did I know, He was listening, and He was about to show me the true power of faith in a way that would shake me to my very core. It happened on the night of October 3rd, 2023. I remember the date clearly because it was the day I had decided to stop my treatment. The pain had become unbearable, and I saw no point in prolonging the inevitable. That night, as I drifted off into a fitful sleep, I had a dream so vivid, so real, that it felt more like a vision. Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so real, that it shook you to your core? That's what happened to me on the night of October 3rd, 2023. I remember the date clearly because it was the day I had decided to stop my cancer treatment. The pain had become unbearable, and I saw no point in prolonging the inevitable. But God had other plans. As I drifted off into a fitful sleep that night, I found myself transported to a vast open field. The air around me shimmered with a golden light, and I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. Suddenly, a figure appeared before me, a man dressed in white, his face radiating a love and compassion I had never experienced before. I knew, without a doubt, that I was in the presence of Jesus himself. "Daniel," he said, his voice both gentle and powerful, sending waves of comfort through my entire being. "What you're about to see will challenge everything you know about your illness and your faith." As he spoke, the scene shifted. I watched as my own body lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines and worried faces. But then, something miraculous happened. A light began to emanate from within me, growing brighter and brighter until it enveloped the entire room. I saw the cancer cells in my body, dark, angry masses, begin to shrink and disappear as the light touched them. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with infinite wisdom. "The key to overcoming this cancer lies not in man's medicine alone, but in the divine healing power I've placed within you. Your faith, Daniel, is more powerful than you know." I woke up gasping, my heart pounding. The dream felt more real than anything I'd experienced in my life. A warmth filled my chest, stronger than any painkiller. For the first time in months, I felt peace. I turned to Emily, my voice shaking as I described the dream. She grabbed my hands, whispering, "We need to pray." In that moment, I realized that sometimes faith speaks in whispers, and sometimes it comes in dreams. From that night on, everything changed. I started believing in the impossible. The next morning, as I lay in my hospital bed, still reeling from the vision, I felt a warmth spreading through my body. It started in my chest, right where the cancer had taken hold, and radiated outward. The pain that had been my constant companion for months began to subside. I watched in awe as my hands, once skeletal and weak, regained their color and strength before my eyes. Have you ever witnessed something that defied all logical explanation? Something so extraordinary that it shook the very foundations of what you thought you knew about the world? That's exactly what happened to me on a crisp autumn morning, 6 months after my cancer diagnosis. I walked into Dr. Patel's office that day, my wife Emily by my side, fully expecting it to be one of my last checkups. The weight of my impending death hung heavy on my shoulders, but I'd made peace with it. Or so I thought. As Dr. Patel reviewed my latest scans, I noticed something change in his expression. Confusion flickered across his face, followed by disbelief. And then, something I never expected to see. A glimmer of hope. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice trembling slightly, I don't quite know how to say this, but the cancer, it stopped growing." I felt Emily's hand tighten around mine, her grip so strong it almost hurt, but I barely noticed. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. "What do you mean, stopped growing?" I asked, hardly daring to believe it. Dr. Patel shook his head, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I can't explain it," he admitted. "By all accounts, given the aggressive nature of your cancer, we should be seeing significant progression, but instead, it's like the tumor has just paused." He ordered more tests, his scientific mind clearly struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. For weeks, we held our breath, caught between hope and fear. And then, we received news that left even the most skeptical doctors speechless. The tumor wasn't just stable, it was shrinking. I'll never forget the look on Dr. Patel's face as he delivered the news. It was a mixture of awe, confusion, and something that looked a lot like fear. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "in all my years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. It's as if your body has suddenly remembered how to fight back." But I knew the truth. This wasn't just my body fighting back. This was God, writing a story that even the most advanced medical textbooks couldn't explain. As I sat there, holding Emily's hand and watching Dr. Patel struggle to find a scientific explanation for my healing, I felt a presence in the room. It was the same presence I'd felt in my dream, the night everything changed, and suddenly I understood that this miracle wasn't just about me. "Dr. Patel," I said, my voice steady and sure, "I know you're looking for a medical explanation for this, but what if there's something more at work here?" He looked at me, his eyes wide. "Mr. Carter, I'm a man of science. I deal in facts, in things I can measure and quantify. But this defies everything I know." I nodded, understanding his struggle. 6 months ago, I was like you. I believed only in what I could see and touch. But then I had an experience that changed everything. As I began to share my story, the dream, the vision of Jesus, the peace that had filled me even in my darkest moments, I saw something shift in Dr. Patel's eyes. It wasn't belief, not yet, but it was the beginning of wonder. "I can't explain what's happening to me medically," I told him, "but I can tell you this. The power that's healing me isn't bound by the laws of science. It's something greater, something that bridges the gap between the physical and the spiritual." Dr. Patel sat back in his chair, his gaze distant. "Mr. Carter," he said slowly, "I've always believed that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. Perhaps this is one of those things." As Emily and I left the office that day, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new sense of purpose. I knew then that my journey through cancer was just the beginning. God had brought me back from the brink of death for a reason. I had a message to share, a warning to sound, and a hope to offer to a world desperately in need of both. But little did I know, the true scope of what Jesus had shown me that night would shake the very foundations of everything we thought we knew about faith, science, and the future of humanity itself. Have you ever felt like you were given a second chance at life? Like you were brought back from the brink of death for a reason? That's exactly where I found myself after my miraculous recovery from terminal cancer. As I stood in Dr. Patel's office hearing those unbelievable words, "The cancer is gone," I knew my life would never be the same. At first, I was overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. I hugged Emily tighter than I ever had before, tears streaming down both our faces. We laughed, we cried, we thanked God over and over again. But as the initial shock wore off, I began to feel a new weight settling on my shoulders. This miracle wasn't just for me. God had spared my life for a reason, and I knew I couldn't keep silent about what had happened. I started small, sharing my story with close friends and family. I'll never forget the look on my brother's face when I told him. His eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with tears as he hugged me fiercely. "Daniel," he whispered, "I don't understand how this is possible, but I'm so grateful you're still here." As word spread, more people wanted to hear my story. At first, I was nervous. Would they believe me? Would they think I was crazy? But the urge to share was stronger than my fear. I remembered Jesus' words to me in that vivid dream. "Your story isn't just about healing, it's about awakening my people to the power of faith in these last days." So I started speaking at church groups, then at hospitals to other cancer patients. Each time I shared, I saw hope ignite in people's eyes. A woman with stage 4 breast cancer grabbed my hand after one talk, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she said. "You've given me a reason to keep fighting." But it wasn't just about inspiring hope. As I spoke, I felt compelled to share the deeper truths Jesus had revealed to me that night. I told them about the spiritual DNA he'd shown me, how our faith could literally rewrite our genetic code. I described the visions of future events, the challenges humanity would face, and the critical role faith would play in overcoming them. Some people were skeptical, of course. I saw the doubt in their eyes, the same doubt I once had, but for every skeptic, there were 10 more who listened with open hearts, hungry for a message of hope in these troubled times. My story reached beyond my small town, touching lives across the country. I started receiving letters and emails from people all over, sharing how my experience had rekindled their faith or given them strength in their own battles with illness. One day, as I sat reading through these messages, I felt that familiar warmth in my chest, the same presence I'd felt in my dream with Jesus. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was my new purpose. God had given me a second chance at life, not just for my own sake, but to be a messenger of hope and a herald of the incredible things to come. You see, what Jesus showed me that night goes far beyond just my personal healing. It's about the future of humanity itself. We're standing on the brink of a great awakening, a convergence of spiritual and scientific knowledge that will shake the very foundations of what we think we know about faith and reality. Most people think that faith and science are incompatible, but the truth is they're two sides of the same coin. And the real shock? They're both incomplete without the missing piece Jesus revealed to me. As I watched scenes of future events unfold before my eyes that night, I realized that this understanding wasn't just about individual healing, it was about the very survival of our species. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. How many will heed this warning before it's too late? We're running out of time, and God's people need to be prepared for what's coming. That's why I can't stay silent. That's why I share my story with anyone who will listen, because every person who opens their heart to this message, every life touched by hope, is one more soul prepared for the incredible events that are about to unfold. What if I told you that the miracle of my healing was just the beginning? That God had shown me something far greater, something that would shake the very foundations of what we think we know about faith and science? As I sit here, my heart pounding with the weight of this revelation, I can't help but feel both excited and terrified about what's to come. You see, during those moments when I was closest to death, when the veil between this world and the next was at its thinnest, Jesus revealed to me a truth so profound that it's taken me months to even begin to understand it. He showed me that our faith isn't just a comforting belief or a set of rituals. It's a powerful force that can literally change our physical reality. I watched in awe as Jesus pulled back the curtain of our physical world. What I saw took my breath away. An intricate network of energy connected every living thing, pulsing with divine light. "This is the grid of faith," Jesus explained, his voice filled with both power and gentleness. "Those who learn to tap into it will shape the future of humanity." But here's the part that still makes me tremble. Jesus showed me how our very DNA contains dormant spiritual abilities waiting to be awakened. It's as if God has programmed us with hidden potential, just waiting for the right key to unlock it. And that key? It's faith. Not just any faith, but a deep, unshakable trust in God's power and His plan for our lives. I saw ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of healing and deliverance. Their faith wasn't just a passive belief, it was an active force that literally moved mountains. A woman laid hands on a child in a hospital bed, and I watched as cancer cells dissolved into nothingness. A man spoke words of life over a withered field, and crops sprang up in abundance. "This is the power I've given my children," Jesus said, "but so few have learned to access it." His words filled me with both excitement and a sense of urgency. Why has this power remained hidden for so long? And how can we activate it in our own lives before it's too late? But Jesus wasn't finished. He showed me visions of the future, events that would shake our world to its core. I saw plagues and disasters unlike anything we've ever faced. The key to overcoming what's coming, Jesus said, lies in this forgotten spiritual practice. As he spoke, I watched in amazement as strands of DNA transformed before my eyes, glowing with heavenly light. "This is how faith can rewrite your very genetic code," Jesus explained. "It's the protection my people will need in the days ahead." The implications of what Jesus was showing me were staggering. This wasn't just about personal healing or individual miracles. This was about the future of humanity itself. We're standing on the brink of a great awakening, a convergence of spiritual and scientific knowledge that will shake the very foundations of what we think we know about faith and reality. Most people think that faith and science are incompatible, but the truth is, they're two sides of the same coin. And the real shock? They're both incomplete without the missing piece Jesus revealed to me. As I watched scenes of future events unfold before my eyes that night, I realized that this understanding wasn't just about individual transformation, it was about the very survival of our species. But here's the question that keeps me awake at night. How will humanity respond when these hidden truths are finally revealed? Will we embrace this new understanding? Or will fear and skepticism blind us to the incredible potential within each of us? As I reflect on the urgency of Christ's message, I can't help but tremble at the weight of this revelation. The miraculous healing I experienced was just the beginning, a small taste of what's possible when we align our beliefs with our divine design. But there's so much more at stake than individual transformations. We're on the brink of a spiritual evolution that will redefine what it means to be human. I find myself constantly replaying the vivid scenes Jesus showed me, trying to grasp the full implications of what's coming. The colors were more vibrant than anything in this world, the emotions more intense than I've ever felt. It's as if my soul was awakened to a higher frequency of existence, and now I can never go back to seeing the world the same way. My story is a testament to the power of faith in the face of impossible odds. When doctors told me I had 6 months to live, I thought my life was over, but God had other plans. Through prayer, trust, and unwavering belief, I experienced a miracle that defied medical explanation. My cancer disappeared, and I was given a second chance at life. Remember, your darkest hour might just be the moment before your miracle. No matter how hopeless things seem, keep believing, keep hoping, and never underestimate the power of prayer. God is still in the business of miracles, and He might just have one waiting for you. If you found hope in my story, don't miss our next video. I died and Jesus revealed the shocking truth about surviving without the mark, shocking NDE. It's a message you can't afford to miss in these critical times.